Hey YouTube, what's up? So, Dark Angel here. I've been confronted by so many people about the right to travel freely. It's unreal. I mean, it's really crazy. And yeah, I'm not getting it online because of the simple fact that I do this out here in the world, you know. And there's something that I want to make abundantly clear in mentioning these things to you. This is not law advice. I'm not giving you law advice. I'm giving you facts. How you apply it is up to you. It's completely up to you how you apply it. Use at your own discretion anything that I tell you. However, you can rest assured that what I tell you is factual. It's based on the facts. So, one thing I've noticed about a lot of case law, new case law that's actually coming out, people taking their cases to courts and they're losing based on the right to drive without a license, registration, insurance, and all, is the wording and or the arguments that they are presenting to the courts. As I've mentioned in a previous video, if you do not go in that courtroom with the proper wording, the proper language, they're not going to give it to you. Don't sit there and expect for them to give it to you. People are contacting me on a regular basis wanting to know, what did I do wrong in my case? What did you say? you know I'm not a lawyer, but I consider myself to be very, very, uh, I don't even know the expression I'm looking for, but I'm very versed in the law. Okay. There's a lot of things. I have a lot of lawyers, a lot of friends who are lawyers, and I listen to them, and I converse with them on a regular basis. And I'm gonna tell you right now that what I have and what I am doing is 100% sound. It's 100% solid, affirmed by a judge. A judge actually affirmed it and told me straight to my face that when you bring this forward, he would hate to be the judge that was on the case. Yeah, he would actually hate to be the judge to have to make the decision. The whole point of this video is to express to you, I'm going to discern the difference between a couple of things that I feel the people need to know and understand, and I want to let you understand or get you to understand that there's a difference between rights and privileges. Now you go back and you say, yeah, but in the Constitution it says privileges and immunities. Yeah, immunities is pretty much a right. A privilege is something that can be altered, taken away, given or taken away at any given time. When a state implements a restriction, or not a restriction, a revised code or a statute or policy, okay, giving you a privilege to do something, there's stipulations, regulations that come with that privilege. If you do this or that, that privilege could be stripped away from you. But did you know that your rights cannot be stripped away from you? No government entity and or its law enforcements can restrict, regulate, put a statute on your rights. They cannot diminish and or reduce your rights. Difference. So, in one of the case laws that I was reading the other day, I come across a case law that actually, it didn't take me by surprise. It just confirmed basically what I was saying, but I had to put two and two together to make it actually make sense. Okay, so let me go into this. Okay, I'm gonna just give you an example about the Washington RCWs. Uh, it's called Washington RCW 46.20.001 through 46.20.025, Section 1. No person may drive a motor vehicle upon a highway in this state without first obtaining a valid driver's license issued to Washington residents under this chapter. Section 2. A person licensed as a driver, keyword driver. If you do not know what a driver is, look under the Supreme Court definitions of what a driver is. Okay? Don't look at a Webster's dictionary or any one of those dictionaries outside of a Black's Law dictionary and or the Supreme Court. Look under the definition of what the Supreme Court deems a driver is. Okay? Under this chapter, may exercise the privilege upon all highways in this state. There was that word, the privilege to drive. Now you say, well, yeah, but the states have been given the rights to regulate and stipulate certain things. Wrong. You're wrong. You assume that that's correct, and it is in part right, but it is wrong. Because here's where you have to learn to discern the difference between a right and a privilege. Your rights cannot be diminished or reduced. They cannot be infringed upon. But you say, oh yeah, but they are all the time. Sure they are. But if you file a civil suit and you prove that they were, you'll win. Simple. Simple as that. You can't get no better explanation than that. Okay? You have to follow through with the filing of the deprivation of your rights. No state is given the right to deprive you of your rights. Is given the authority to deprive you of your rights. No state. No government entity, no law enforcement, nobody is given the right to infringe upon your rights. Privilege. When you apply for a license, you surrender your rights. There are only two ways you can surrender your rights. One, if you voluntarily, knowingly and voluntarily surrender them, you give up your rights. Or two, there has been an amendment made to the Constitution that deprives all citizens of their rights. That's the only two ways that you can give up rights. Okay? There ain't no other way. Not through no statute, not through no policy, not through some police officer coming up to your car saying, well, it's a privilege, you don't have a right. Yes, I do have a right to be here traveling on this road. By my everyday modern means of conveyance, I have a right to be here on this road to travel. I have a right to be here. You can't stop it. You can't prevent it. And where the discerning the difference is in the privilege, the state is allowed under the FMCSA, Federal Motor Carriers Rules Administration. Federal Motor Carriers Safety Rules Administration. FMCSA. For anybody that does not know, that's this right here. Those laws that say that the states have the right to apply regulations and rules, this is what they're talking about. This book right here. You can't see this book right here. This is the book that they're referring to. That book. Every single law, if you look back to all the laws, they talk about commerce, commercial capacity, for hire, etc., etc. If you pay attention, close attention, you'll notice that nowhere in any of those laws does it say anything about a person's right to travel in private on a public highway. As long as they're not for hire, there's no rules and regulations, no laws that stipulate how that person can travel. Imagine that. But in order for you to get permission to travel, okay, you have to apply for a driver's license. So now you waive your rights, you subjected yourself under the state's jurisdiction, you've accepted their privilege, which comes with what? Stipulations, regulations, rules. You have to get a driver's license. You have to have a CDL. Under those rules and stipulations that they're talking about that the state is allotted to do, what they're talking about is the gross governor weight of a motor vehicle. 60,000 pounds, 70,000 pounds, 80,000 pounds, 90,000 pounds is restricted to go in these particular areas. No semi-tractor trailers or commercial vehicles allowed in the downtown area at a certain time during the day. The height, the width, the length of the vehicle. These are the restrictions that the laws are referring to. They're referring to the laws, the rules that's straight out of the FMCSA. They're referring to those laws right out of that book. These laws, they're saying that some states will be allowed the right to add stipulations and regulations, right? Special stipulations and regulations. Yeah, that's exactly what they're talking about. They're talking about those. There is a case law that actually specifies this. Check this out. Let me see. Let me find it. The argument has been clearly established as well as defined. The state is only given authority to apply special regulations, license registrations, and insurance to users of the highways for transportation of persons and property for hire, not applicable to those using the highway for public purpose. Richmond Bacon Company versus Department of Treasury, 18 Northeast 2D 788. There you go. Your privilege, the regulations that it talks about. When you go into these courts and you try to argue your case, and you're arguing your case to the extent to where you would accidentally say, well, yeah, the state is afforded a right. No, it's not. No, it's not. It is not afforded a right to impede upon your rights to travel. Now, the state can do whatever it wants to its privilege because it's a privilege it implemented. That privilege can be taken away from you, given to you. There's proof of that right there. A privilege is not something that's fixed. It's something that can be modified. A right cannot be modified. Keep that in mind, people. A right can't be modified, but a privilege can. So when the laws come out and they say that states may be able to use regulations, and you go into the court and you're arguing your case, and the state says, hey, we have the right to apply regulations. Yes, you do. To your privilege. Yes, you do. To your privilege. Make it like you don't understand what they're talking about. They're getting ready to argue that because that's how these cases are being won. The state is arguing that they have the right to apply specifications, stipulations, and regulations. Yes, you do. To your privilege. You don't have no right to interfere in my rights. You have no authority to interfere in my rights. I did not apply for your privilege, therefore I'm not under your jurisdiction. See? You don't have to become a national citizen, a foreign national. You don't have to be sovereign. You don't have to do all these other things that all these videos are telling you to do. If you want to, that's your choice. That's up to you completely. And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking foreign national. I'm not knocking sovereignty. I'm not knocking any of that. I'm congratulating those that are standing up for their rights. Now, everybody does it in a different way. Sovereigns do it their way. People who claim foreign nationalism, they do it their way, and they have their set little standards and what have you. But as a United States citizen who is just fighting his rights outright as a citizen, I have more leeway to argue the case than what they would, based on the fact that I have facts that are not altered, facts that are not situated to where it fits what I'm trying to do. I have straight facts, straight from the law books. A lot of people have failed to discern the difference between a right and a privilege. When the case laws, bottom line, people, when the case law says, hey, we have a right to apply regulations and stipulations. on this. Yeah, they're referring to their privilege, and you need to make sure that you voice that. Yes, you do have a right to put those regulations and stipulations on your privilege to drive, i.e., driver pursuant to that of the United States Supreme Court is defined as an individual who operates a motor vehicle for hire in an act of commerce. And if a statute goes to the term driver in it, guess what? That's commercial. That becomes commercial because that expression driver is commercial. It's not private or citizen. It's commercial. It becomes commercial. So you can argue that under the commercial capacity because you'd win. You can't lose this case if the statute itself is written where it says driver, operator. Any officer gets up there and stops you and pulls you over and says, "Are you not driving this motor vehicle?" "No, I'm traveling." A driver is a person for hire under a commercial capacity. They could say, "Well, no, that's not." Yes, it is. Your opinion of what the word means and what the Supreme Court says the word is what matters and is what counts. So therefore, what you're arguing is your understanding and ignorance of the law, which ignorance of the law is unacceptable. There is no such thing as a law enforcement officer being ignorant of the laws they are supposed to be enforcing. Kind of ironic, wouldn't you think? So, what is a police? How do you spell the word policy? Policy, right? So let's say it in another text. Police. P-O-L-I, poly, C-E, police, policy. Get it? Instead of a Y at the end, it's an E. Policy. They are policy enforcers. They're not law enforcement. Policy, police are the exact same, just one's with a Y, one's with an E. Policy enforcers. They are enforcing unconstitutional statutes. There is no such thing as a state being given the right to enforce unconstitutional statutes. No state has a right to impede upon that of your rights. Every state has a right to regulate their privilege. I'm not going to argue that point because that point is a proven fact. That they can come in and regulate, stipulate, put restrictions on their privilege. They can do whatever they want to their privilege. If you volunteer and give up and knowingly volunteer to give up your rights to drive under their privilege, then you have to accept whatever stipulations or regulations they put on you. That's just part of the game. That's a given. But if you're exercising your constitutional right to travel, they have no authority to impede or infringe upon that right. And see, that's what they're trying to drive everybody. That's what they're trying to drive everyone away from. The rights. Here, accept this privilege so that we can do this to you and do this to you and do this to you. No, don't accept that privilege. If you decide that you want to drive in that capacity and enter their jurisdiction, more power to you. Hands off. I'm going to tell you why I know what I'm talking about is because Dark Angel, I used to fall under this manual right here. I used to fall under that. That's right. I used to fall under that because I drove 18-wheelers. Go on my page, Angel GC Johnson, on Facebook. Look at my videos. I'm driving those big 18-wheelers. That's why I know the difference between the laws. I know what the laws stand for. And for people to sit here on this channel or just in general and say, no, driving's not a right. Yes, it is a right. It is a right. Regardless of what you think. It is a right. If you refuse to research, then live in ignorance, is the way I put it. You refuse to research, live in ignorance, because that's what you'll be doing, living in ignorance. Because knowledge falls none to nobody that wants to learn. If you want to learn and your opinion that you give is weightless, meritless, has no standing, live like that. But I'd rather you get in my face with proof. Show me a case law that has been passed within the last 200 years now, that shows that a state has the authority to take your rights. Show me a case law that gives the state the authority to take a right and turn it into a crime. I'll quit posting videos, you show me that. But I can show you tons of case law where that's totally different. I can show you tons of case law where the rules and regulations that I just described to you here, learning to discern the difference between a right and a privilege and what the state is and is not allowed to do. I can show you hundreds of case laws on that. Because, yeah, those regulations and stipulations that they're talking about that they are allowed to do, they can do under their privilege. They cannot apply those same stipulations and regulations to your rights. That is called the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Under the 14th Amendment, you have those rights. You are guaranteed those rights. Those are inalienable rights. Again, if you accept their privilege, then you take the stipulations and the regulations that come with it. But people know, when you go into that courtroom, if you do not separate the argument, the state will trip you up. The people will trip you up and use the stipulations and regulations against you, such as they did in the case that I had mentioned in a previous video about the young lady named Potts out of Spokane, Washington. She lost her case because she specifically stated in there that the state should have some right. And she didn't go into specifics as to why the state should have some rights. She actually renamed the license as a certificate of competency. Well, as you all know, when you apply for a CDL, you are required to take a driving skills test, just like you would be for driving an automobile. But the difference is there's no case law on that specifying about you having to take a driver's test to drive your automobile. However, there is plenty of case law that shows that yes, you must take a competency test to learn how to drive an 18-wheeler, a commercial motor vehicle. Yes, you'd have to know that certain cities only allow certain gross weight vehicles to enter into their city limits at certain specific times in certain areas. Bridge heights, trailer lengths, widths. All this is the regulations and stipulations. The CDL, a restriction. You see what I'm saying? All these are the restrictions that the states are allowed to apply to their privilege, not your rights. So you need to discern the difference when the state comes to argue that we reserve the right to add stipulations. Yeah, you can do that on your privilege. You cannot apply that to my rights. My rights to free travel is unrestricted travel. Constitution says so. Supreme Court says so. Now, your form or mode of conveyance is whatever you choose, because there is no law that says you can't. There's no law that says you can't. In 200 years of formulation of law that has been presented to the courts and ruled upon, there is no law that specifies what type of conveyance you're allowed to utilize on the roads, for the exception of commercial motor vehicles for hire, commerce. That's it. The same three, all those three go under one title, commercial motor vehicles. That is regulated and governed by this book, Yeah, I'm showing you this book because I want you all to understand this. When you buy a car, when you buy your automobile, you're not given a book like this. When you go to take your test references the safeties that you should use, the safety precautions that you should use in operation of a motor vehicle. When you go to take your test, it's either pass or fail. When you do all that writing and all that stuff on that test, all that just is just to see if you're smart or not, to see if they can categorize you as a smart driver or a dumb driver. That's all that is. You know, you need to learn that I'm going to put the facts out there. You know, the states don't want you to know this. I've even had a judge tell me that he would not want to be the one to make a ruling on any of this due to the erroneousness of the application. Because so many people misunderstand that by you having a license just to drive your car to and from the store, to and from your job, you're not getting paid to actually be on the street. You know, like truck drivers, they're paid so many cents a mile. Taxi cab drivers are paid by the mile. Uber, they're paid, you know, by the drops that they make. This is using the street for commerce. But if you're just going from A to B to your store or to your job or out and about to go camping, hiking, to a park or whatever, you know, there's a case law that even specifies that the tax dollars were supposed to be taxed on commercial vehicles' use of the highways to repair and fix the roads. I actually have that case law, and in another video I'll go into detail about that case law. That's where the tax money was supposed to come from, not from everyday public use of the highways from citizens. It's supposed to come from those who accept the privilege that the state offered to conduct business on their highways. You want to conduct business on these highways, we're going to charge you a tax. In the event that that heavy vehicle destroys our roads, then we can come back and fix those roads with the money that we're charging you to conduct your business on these highways. Yeah, there's a case law in reference to that. Yeah, I have it. I found it. So, for all you out there who doubt, keep doubting. Because I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to be a win. It's going to be a win, and it's going to be monumental. It's going to be a landmark case that's going to win by a landslide. Because here's the thing, the state, the people, the United States has no legitimate argument that can contradict anything that will be presented in that case. There's nothing, unless you misword it and you give them that in. If you give them that in, then they're going to run away with it. They're going to use and derail. They're going to derail the argument away from the main point of what you're trying to argue, and that's how they're going to get you. You keep it focused on the rights and privileges. I'm telling you, if you keep it focused on that and show them that, yeah, under your privilege, you can apply those restrictions. You know, because they're going to use that argument in there. The safety concerns, this, that, and the other, you know, and the rules and the stipulations and the yeah, under commercial privilege, and I said commercial privilege, but you know what I meant. Under privilege, yes, you can apply all the rules you want, because under a privilege, you could take it away or give it back. But under rights, you can't take my rights. You cannot force me to give up my rights to do something voluntarily. That's my right, my choice. I have the right to choose as to whether or not I want to waive my rights and do something voluntarily. You can't infringe upon that. You don't have that authority. No state is given that authority. If you don't believe me, look in the Constitution, read it. I do believe it's under the 6th Amendment. I do believe that you can find that. I could be wrong. Could be the 5th. It could be the 14th. But I guarantee you, if you read between the 5th, the 6th, the 14th, the 9th, and the 10th amendments, you're going to find it. You're going to find it that no state is given that authority to do that. Deprivation of rights is a serious issue that has been going on, and they've been slowly encroaching upon everybody's rights for centuries now. For decades, I should say. I won't say centuries, but for decades now. And guess what? Everybody's just bowing their heads down, letting it happen. Get your heads up out of your ass. Quit being a sheep and following the flock, and think for yourselves. I'm not telling you something out of, because I'm anti-government. No, I'm not anti-government. I'm actually for the government, but I'm not for a government that is going to take rights that were given to me away. But I'm not anti-government by any means. Yes, laws apply to me. Yes, I have to follow the traffic laws. Yes, I have to follow the stipulations and regulations, but I don't need a license or a registration or insurance to do that. You know, common sense would tell me if I'm operating a motor vehicle to operate it in the most cautious of care. And that is the most cautious of care for others, my fellow drivers, my fellow operators, my fellow travelers, I should say. I won't even use, I'm sorry for even using the word driver or operator, but even still, them too. You know, I have to travel in my automobile with respect to them as well as my fellow travelers, you know. So no, I don't apologize for that. I take that back. I don't apologize for that. I'm actually going to say that, yeah, out of respect for everyone else who's on the highways and byways and freeways, yeah, you know, it would only be common sense that I be cautious, be careful, you know. So, you know, don't be fooled when the state comes in and starts to argue about that they're allotted this information, that they can put these stipulations on you. Don't let them do it. Separate the two, because they're trying to conjoin the two to confuse you, to cause a clusterfuck. And as long as your brain is clusterfucked into believing that they do have this right to do this, you will not be able to discern the difference between a privilege and a right. Yes, under your privilege you can do that, but under my rights you are not allowed to restrict and or modify and or reduce or diminish my rights. Until next time, yeah, this video was a little bit long and it was a little scattered, but it's okay, because I was actually excited to share this information with you because of the simple fact I want you to remember, FMCSA, whenever a court comes at you and says that they have a right to regulate, stipulate, and or put restrictions on something, that is in reference to their privilege. They're only given that right to do that to their privilege that they applied, that you voluntarily gave up your rights for. Then they can do that. But you are not held to those restrictions, those regulations, those stipulations under your rights. Your rights cannot be abridged. You cannot be deprived of your rights. The right to travel has been well established all across the continental United States of America, people. Drive.